Good morning, you guys. I'm going to be in Hebrews chapter 11, and the verse of the day is 8, but I'm going to be reading all of chapter 11. It's kind of a long chapter, but really listen to these words and take into consideration what's going on here. I'm just going to read from the word. I'm not going to read any of the study information because it's so long, and I got to be going to work here in about 30 minutes, so I'm going to try to wrap this up in about 15-20 minutes. But, today's March 19th. Today's Friday. For most of us, that's payday. So let's rejoice in the Lord. He's given us another great week to work hard and give him what we could. And we can still continue on by doing what we got to do today. So today's title is Great Examples of Faith. Now, that's in the Word. But on my daily devotion, the title of the day is The Way of Abraham in Faith. It's really deep there. It talks about Abraham, the way of Abraham in faith. All right, I'm going to continue on here. Chapter 11, Hebrews, right here. Faith is the confidence that we hope for will actually happen. So, faith is the confidence that we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. Through their faith, the people in days of old earned a good reputation. By faith, we understand that the entire universe was formed at God's command, that what we now see did not come from anything that can be seen. It was by faith that Abel brought a more acceptable offering to God than Cain did. Abel's offering gave evidence that he was a righteous man, and God showed his approval of his gifts. Although Abel is long dead, he still speaks to us by his example of faith. It was by faith that Enoch was taken up to heaven without dying. He disappeared because God took him. For before he was taken up, he was known as a person who pleased God, and it is impossible to please God without faith. So it's impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him. It was by faith that Noah built a large boat to save his family from the flood. He obeyed God, who warned him about things that had never happened before. By his faith, Noah condemned the rest of the world, and he received the righteousness that comes by faith. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called to leave, this is the verse of the day, home and go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance. He called him to leave home and go. Let me read that again. I messed that up. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going. So you guys got to think there. It's a really big thing what Abraham did and what Noah did. And even when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith, for he was like a foreigner, living in tents. And so did Isaac and Jacob, who inherited the same promise. Abraham was confidently looking forward to a city with eternal foundations, a city designed and built by God. It was by faith that even Sarah was able to carry a child, though she was barren and was too old. She believed that God would keep his promise. And so a whole nation came from this one man who was as good as dead. A nation with so many people that, like the stars in the sky and the sand on a seashore, there is no way to count them. All these people died still believing that God had promised them, or what God had promised them. They did not receive what was promised, but they saw it all from a distance and welcomed it. They agreed that they were foreigners and nomads here on earth. Obviously, people who say such things are looking forward to a country they can call their own. If they had longed for the country they came from, they could have gone back, but they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. That is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. It was by faith that Abraham offered Isaac as a sacrifice when God was testing Abraham, who had received God's promises, was ready to sacrifice his only son Isaac. Even though God had told him, Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted, Abraham reasoned that if Isaac died, God was able to bring him back to life again. And in a sense, Abraham did receive his son back from the dead. It was by faith that Isaac promised blessings for the future of his sons, Jacob and Esau. It was by faith that Jacob, when he was old and dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and bowed in worship and leaned on his staff. It was by faith that Joseph, when he was about to die, said confidently that the people of Israel would leave Egypt. He even commanded them to take his bones with them when they left. And it was by faith that Moses' parents hid from the 3 months when he was born. They saw that God had given them an unusual child, and they were not afraid to disobey the king's command. It was by faith that Moses, when he grew up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to share the oppression of God's people instead of enjoying the pleasures of sin. He thought it was better to suffer for the sake of Christ than to own the treasures of of Egypt. For he was looking ahead to his great reward. It was by faith that Moses left the land of Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He kept right on, going because he kept his eyes on the one who is invisible. It was by faith that Moses commanded the people of Israel to keep the Passover and sprinkle blood on the doorpost, so that the angel of death would not kill their firstborn sons. It was by faith that the people of Israel went right through the Red Sea as though they were on dry ground. When the Egyptians tried to follow, they were all drowned. It was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days, and the walls came crashing down. It was by faith that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. How much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of the faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength. They became strong in the battle and put on the whole armies to flight. Women received their loved ones back again from death. But others were tortured, refusing to turn from God in order to be set free. They placed their hope in a better life after the resurrection. Some were jeered at, and their backs were cut open with whips. Others were chained in prison. Some died by stoning. Some were sawed in half, and others were killed by the sword. Some went about wearing skins of sheep and goats, destitute and oppressed and mistreated. They were too good for this world, wandering over the deserts and mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground. All these people earned a good reputation because of their faith, yet none of them received all that God had promised, for God had something better in mind for us, so that they would not reach perfection without us. It's a really good chapter there of Hebrews, talking about some faith. The verse of the day is 11:8. So I'm going to go back and read that. And I remember a brother telling me about verse 11:11, Hebrews 11:11. It was by faith that Sarah was able to have a child, though she was barren and was too old. She believed that God would keep his promise. That was chapter 11, but today's chapter 8, or verses 8. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed. So that's what we're going to be talking about in My Utmost for His Highest. Today's chapter 11, verse 8. So let's go into this devotion here. In the Old Testament, personal relationship with God showed itself in separation, and this is symbolized in the life of Abraham by his separation from his country and from his kith and kin. Today, the separation is more of a mental and moral separation from the way that those who are dearest to us look at things. That is, if they have not a personal relationship with God, Jesus Christ emphasized this. You can see this in Luke chapter 14, verse 26. Faith never knows where it is being led, but it loves and knows the one who is leading. It is a life of faith, not of intellect and reason, but a life of knowing who makes us go. The root of faith is the knowledge of a person, and one of the biggest snares is the idea that God is sure to lead us to success. The final stage in the life of faith is attainment of character. There are many passing transfigurations of character. When we pray, we feel the blessing of God enwrapping us, and for the time being, we are changed. Then we get back to the ordinary days and ways, and the glory vanishes. The life of faith is not a life of mounting up with wings, but a life of walking and not fainting. It is not a question of sanctification, but of something infinitely further on than sanctification. Of faith that has been tried and proved and has stood the test. Abraham is not a type of sanctification, but a type of the life of faith. A tried faith built on a real God. Abraham believed God. Very powerful there. So God told Abraham that he was going to have a child, and he's really old, and he's going to have a family that is going to pretty much populate the whole world, and there's going to be so many descendants of him that they're going to be like sands on the seashore. So, and the stars in the sky. So it's pretty powerful right there. He had to have a lot of faith in God to do that. I mean, there's a time that he was tested to kill his son, or I don't really know the story that well, but I know of it. And I need to get back in the Old Testament to really read some of these. I've been in the New Testament this whole time, but this is where God's got me, so I'm going to keep doing that. But hopefully one day I'll get to the Old Testament so I can really, really know the details of what's going on here. And you guys can join with me as well, because God's given me the faith to do these devotions every day and stand on his foundation. And I'll tell you what, the first day I started doing this, I was kind of weary, but now I'm months passed and I've learned so much thanks to God and thanks to just doing it. And it's just a blessing for me to do it and to pass these along to whoever listens. And I'm thankful for that. And I hope that whatever's said helps you as well on this path, and it just lifts us both up so we can both learn and stand with God in everything that we do. And that's what this is about. We got to have this faith. Without faith, we can't do nothing. So right here it even says, it gives assurance about things we cannot see. So 11:1, that's what the verse was that my brother told me. It wasn't 11:11. 11:1. By faith, we understand that the entire universe was formed at God's command, that what we can see did not come from anything that can be seen. We got to have this faith, guys. It's really important. Without faith, all these things would have never happened for God's calling for these people and for what needed to happen. So this message could be passed down, through generations and hundreds of years. So that's how strong faith is, and that's what faith is, and that's what we need to have every day. And when you do things that you aren't supposed to do, and I mean, this is coming from the horse's mouth here. Whenever you do things you're not supposed to do, we're not showing God faith, and that's why I'm saying this. Like I know because of what I've done in my life. And that's why I hope that whoever's listening to this really listens to what I'm saying. Like, I've still had faith through everything I've done. But the way my life's going is I'm starting to change my ways for God for the better. But I've always had faith in Him. And He's made me the man I am today. And it hasn't been the most perfect life. So whenever I read from my most firmest highest, some people were sawed in half and And this word here today, some people had faith. They weren't treated the way they were supposed to be treated, but they still stood there because it's for God's purpose. You know, we still got to have that faith no matter what's happening in your life, because God is using us for His purpose, not ours. Anyways, you guys, I hope you liked today's message. I know I did. I appreciate this one. This one was a really good one. Faith is really important. Without faith, and there's not going to be nothing, because like faith gives you that hope, and you know it's real, and that's how you walk without seeing anything. And that's what really is one of the main characteristics of being a believer of Christ and Jesus here. So let us stand strong on the foundation today and let our faith lead us, because that's what gives us the strength to believe. God bless you all. I'm out of here. Hope you guys have a great day.